Minister, you are the minister responsible for Canadian unity. If Quebec decides to separate, would you, in carrying out your government's fiduciary responsibility to us, advocate the use of force to stop Quebec taking our lands with them?
Well, I spent the first 11 years of my life in Quebec. So Quebec goes, there's part of my childhood gone with it.
I don't think the Legion will stand by quietly and allow the country to be lost by negligence and by the more or less hidden agendas of what I call the megalomaniacs.
I don't think it helps things for people to use incendiary language, to talk about separation, to talk about the use of force. If separation arrives, we have to deal with that within the context of Canadian traditions. And those Canadian traditions do not involve the use of force. But our... All right. Well now, there is no doubt that force has been used. Just a second. If you want, yes, I can ask, yes. If you want to elevate the use of force to a Canadian tradition, perhaps that can be done.
We were, one of the few countries that was formed just through signature as opposed to war. I mean, our history is one of a very pacifist, and I think that's very honorable, and I think it develops a certain style of people, and perhaps that's why we're in this mess, because we don't fight for things, and we've never had to fight for things.
What are you interested in doing here? And are you interested in disinterring the past, or are you interested in building a future? I'm here because I'm interested in building a future.
Really think from the bottom of my heart that we maybe have left too much to the politicians.
8 minutes now before 8 o'clock on Information Morning. Well, you can forget Spicer and his entourage. You can forget Dobie and her staff. Even forget Joe Clark's attempts to heal this country. If Jim Taylor has his way, Canada will be saved, at least in part, by billboards. Jim, tell me how this billboard campaign started.
I was driving my transport truck north of Toronto one night, about 3 o'clock in the morning, and the news broadcast was about, the headline was about the economic ramifications on Canada should Quebec separate. And quite frankly, something in me snapped, and I'm not sure what it was, but I stopped my truck, pulled over to the side of the road, and decided that it was time that I, as an individual Canadian, did something.
Hey, watch out.
I don't know what it is or why they allow these politicians to get on, but I'd love to be in Ottawa and say to the head of our country, Prime Minister Mulroney, and take that fellow that's doing all the shooting off and say, my friend, either you put up or shut up, or we're going to charge you with treason.
The politicians, unfortunately, are not doing the right kind of, not saying the kind of words I want to hear. I'm just one individual. I don't have any great answers, don't have any great insights. Simple statement. My vision of Canada includes Quebec. So I phoned up a local printing company and said, I'd like a bumper sticker made up just so I can put it on the back of my van. And they said, well, the minimum order is $200, and it'll cost you $93.10. So I said, okay, give me $200. And I put one on the back of my van, and I remember driving to work through downtown Toronto the first day and skulking down behind the steering wheel because who knows what's going to happen, looking for rocks being thrown at my vehicle. But instead of what happened the first day is I had 3 people stop me and say, where did you get the bumper sticker? I said, well, I have 199 of them. Have one.
Oh, I loved it. I was just walking out of the store and I thought, my Canada includes Quebec. Bon, ça y est.
It snowballed from there. I mean, gave away my 200 bumper stickers within the first 4 weeks, and then people started lining up behind me essentially and saying, well, you should do more, or what else can you do, sort of thing. And on my own, I essentially said I need to turn up the volume a little bit, so I went down to a local billboard company and said, I'd like to rent some billboards.
A while back when I was watching the Mike Duffy News show on Sunday, I saw a
piece about this Taylor fellow who had put up a sign, "My Canada includes Quebec." And I was so moved by that story, and I felt so strongly about it myself that I decided to do the same thing. I have a craft store in Shediac, so the next day I made a big sign with big two cross-Canadian flags, and I put French on one side and English on the other, and I put them side by side, not one under the other, so it looked level and even. And so I put up this sign, and it evoked such a lot of interest. I had people coming in off the street. They heard about it on the news, and one couple 2 days later had heard it on the radio news, and they were driving through the Atlantic provinces, but they stopped off in Shediac, especially to meet me and to have a look at the sign. And another lady brought me over a glass of wine, or at least a bottle of wine, and said she was excited about my doing that sort of thing. And so I've kept the bottle of wine, and when the Constitution is made and we are one Canada from sea to sea to sea, then I'm going to invite her back and we'll break the bottle and drink to it.
Amazingly enough, I suppose, I have an unlisted phone number. I'm not in the Toronto telephone book, but people started writing me letters to places where I was interviewed. Please forward to Jim Taylor. Or they write to the billboard company and say, please forward to Jim Taylor. And I had some 300 letters and some $750, $800 and $10 and $5. People sending me money, not knowing whether or not I would receive it.
So you really hit a nerve with this?
Yeah.
At what point did you decide that you were going to take these billboards and you were going to have them signed by people?
Well, as a result of getting this money, and I didn't want to put the money in my back pocket, and I had these 300 names with very heartfelt letters, I just decided, well, the way I'll spend this money, and I'll just essentially write their names on the billboard. So at the end of it all, we had some 6,100 signatures on these 2 billboards.
And it's just snowballed from there.
It's snowballed from there.
I'm pleased to introduce Mayor Ducharme to introduce Jim Taylor. Mayor Ducharme.
Thank you very much, and it is indeed a pleasure to be here and be part of this tremendous initiative that's been taken on by one man.
Bienvenue à Moncton et bonne chance dans ton projet. Congratulations and good luck. We hope that you're successful in your efforts to keep this country united.
Just in time.
Today we had a competition between us and Moncton. And Moncton had 7,000 signatures, but they wanted Quebec to stay part of Canada. Well, we beat Moncton today. We had a lot more signatures than that.
On the second board.
On the second board.
Yeah, you're on the second board already.
On the second board, he tells me, this is the young man that's doing that. We want to... If you get a chance before you go home, and you want to take your kids down just to send a message to those little kids in Quebec that we love them, we're all one, and we want to send them a good Christmas message, just sign the little billboard on the bottom floor of Brunswick Square. Thank you very much.
Well, I've been on the go all day. Well, I just got a rush call to come here. And I did my best, and here I am. Merry Christmas to everybody, and a very prosperous and happy New Year, and a united Canada, I hope.
Okay, 1, 2, 3. My Canada includes Quebec.
I just have a little problem in the My Canada Includes Quebec, which puts the emphasis on really what I want. And that's wonderful that I want Canada to be included. But it's rather like a man saying to his wife, my life, I can't live without you. But because of that, you really can't separate or go away from me. Whereas it's should be the woman's choice to say, I want to stay with you. So I think the emphasis is not on what I want, but on what Quebec wants.
You're not going to change Quebec, you're not going to change Newfoundland, you're not going to change Ontario, you're not going to change BC, you're not going to change nothing. You're not going to change the Asian either.
But you can't find out about them.
Oh yes, you can, because we are the best people in the world, and we live in the best country in the world.
There's nothing wrong with having culture. There's nothing wrong with having your language. But don't penalize the people who don't have your culture and your language. And that's what they're doing in Quebec. Like, they're penalizing all the Anglophones up there. That's wrong. Like, before they started this foolishness, we didn't do that with the French here in Cape Breton or anywhere else. We let them live. We let them have their language. We let them have their culture, just like they let us have our language and our culture. But in Quebec, that's all they want, is for people to have their culture, and that's wrong. I can't agree with that.
I mean, if there wasn't negativity, if there wasn't that sort of thing, I would not have to be doing this. It's as simple as that.
I respect Quebec's differences. That's why I went there. I went there to learn French. Hell, I wanted to learn that language. I gave up a lot to learn French. I gave up my job. I gave up my security because I wanted to learn the other language of our country. And I took chances to do that. And I just feel kind of frustrated when I feel the hostility that people have for one another because we are French or because we are English. And it seems that we forget that we are basically the same people, the same kinds of people. Why can't we just live together, you know, as one country in peace and harmony?
For being open-minded, and I think this is embarrassing as a Canadian that we are putting up such an argument about the Francophone. It is embarrassing. It's silly. I don't understand it at all.
They're afraid, yes, that if they lose their language, that's what the Acadians were afraid of. Let's say my parents' time, they were afraid that if we lost our language, we would lose our culture. But I say that, look, even to them, my parents, if they were alive, I'd say, look, no, you don't lose your culture by losing your language. I think language, as I said, is a method of communicating. If you didn't speak French, if you don't speak French and you don't speak French, and I can't speak English, we can't have this discussion.
You know what I feel? I'm going to tell you what. I don't think that they got the wrong impression. They have their own impression. You'll have to excuse my English. I learned it off the floor, on the ship decks. But since I found out the dictionary almost right, that's the secret. That's the secret for the English people. Et c'est aussi le secret pour les Canadiens français. Prenez un dictionnaire Larousse, et puis prenez un classique. Puis regardez-les, puis utilisez-les. Pour moi, c'est ma Bible. This is my Bible, is my two dictionaries.
Yes, it's by being bilingual. Because being bilingual, I can talk and make friends with everybody wherever I go.
The state of Canada. C'est Quebec.
When you were a child, you were told that the English were bad and they were the enemy?
Sure.
And when did you find out they weren't?
I never took it this way, because I never believe on anything unless I've tried it. Before I taste sugar was sweet, I had to taste it. And before I could call somebody dirty, I got to find out who they are.
People of Quebec haven't been taught right, but the rest of the country is theirs too.
Ignorance is the trouble.
My main thing for next May is to travel across Canada and see my country. People say, well, go through the States, it's cheaper fuel. Could be cheaper fuel, but it's not my country. I want to see my country.
And in 1967, when I was 15 years old, the Kiwanis sponsored our band to go to Expo 67. So we were put on a train, transcontinental, came across Canada. I was billeted along with everybody else in our group at the Francophone families in the north end of Montreal for, some 4 or 5 nights. And they had kids my own age, where I was, 15 years old. didn't have two heads. They didn't have a tail. You know, had acne like I had acne. They spoke a different language. They had a different culture. But they had the same concerns as me. You know, the parents wanted them to do well in school, just like mine did. It was a real eye-opener.
Look, you came into Confederation on few different terms than the rest of us. They had their own civil law. They had protection for their language, and they had protection for their religion, just the same as Newfoundland had protection for their schools. BC had protection for the Via Rail. Now let me tell you how I wish we had come into Confederation under the same terms and conditions as BC and Nova Scotia as well, because we would not have lost our rail service. BC went to court and saved theirs. So we come into it under different conditions.
And this man, who is an old salt, he must have been all of 5 foot 4 inches tall, rammed his finger into my chest and he said, "My son," he said, "if the Quebec government did anything less than pull out all the stops or do everything they could to further the aims of the people in Quebec, they should be thrown out of office."
There's no ill will in Newfoundland, and there's always a willingness to go the extra step if necessary, but not on their knees.
Right. I'm a Canadian, I'm a Federalist, and in 1988 I received the heart of a young fellow from Mississauga, a young fellow for 24 years old who died in a car accident, and since then I've been living with the heart of a young Ontarian, and I've been living, I was able to be back on the job because of this young man, and I'm very grateful to the Institute and to my country because it was so easy to do it, you know.
Because when a billboard starts off and it's empty, and the first person comes up, and the first 100 people come up and sign their name, you say, well, that's kind of a novel thing.
Yeah.
And then from 100 to, say, 3,000, you say, well, that's turned into a magical thing.
Yeah.
And when you get more than 3,000, it goes past magical. It's really powerful. Interviewed and they said, here's $10, Jim, take it, do something more.
When I first read about it in the newspapers and on the TV, there was a Toronto guy with these signs going all over the Maritimes, and then he brought me the paper from PEI. It was a national unity tour, and it's really got me believing that this guy was really trying to save the place. So they dropped some stuff on my shop, and I've been working ever since on those signs, and I enjoy the work and donating most of my time really for this worthy cause. I hope it works.
I make stamp jewelry, and one of the fellows came over, and when I found out where he was from and what he was doing in Moncton, there was a really great Canadian stamp from I think it was from the 60s, a 5-cent stamp, and it said Canada United Unique, and I thought it was very fitting for them to have, so I had 2 of them. One went to Jim and one went to Martin, and the next thing I know, I was suggesting to them that perhaps they include me in the part of their trip to the Maritimes, that they needed an extra hand.
You know what I really liked was Hillary today. I've never noticed it before. Her people go by and she says, "Do you want to sign our billboards?" And that's great. Not the billboards or Jim Taylor's billboards, but it's our billboards. You ever consider building a railway or a pyramid?
I saw Jim Taylor on television.
Yeah?
And I liked his theme, his project, and I thought I'd like to come down and meet him today.
Yeah? And you just have?
And I just did that.
Shake his hand?
I shook his hand, yeah. And my name is Mary McNeil, and I'm from Bredor, and I was over in Sydney shopping anyway.
Jim, in a way, is trapped because he's responsible to us now, who are now following and doing. I mean, at a certain point, you're going to have to say it's enough. But, you know, I mean, and that's going to be another sort of crisis when you actually say, hey, I've done my bit. That's it. I'm stopping. You know, you want to carry on, and you know you should. Well, you missed. But I've done my bit. I'm pulling back.
I'm gonna have to, and I'm gonna have to do that at some point because I don't want to get wrapped in the political situation. I'm gonna bow out of this before the end of it. Quite frankly. Before we deliver the signs. I don't. Well.
No, that's your job.
You can't.
You've got to deliver those signs.
So what's the schedule for tomorrow? You got
7:30 a.m. CBC morning show interview with Mike Ireton, downtown St. John. And we should confirm that even now if you want. My feeling is tomorrow's going to just run, and we're going to...
We won't have to leave. You guys will leave.
What time is it?
12:30.
Oh, God.
Okay.
You know what it's going to be like.
We got a long day.
No doubt the perception of people is that here I am out in front of billboards and doing this with no second thoughts, no doubts, no conflicts. And it is not the case. How's your business in Toronto without you? I don't know. I'm scared to find out. Yeah? But you're going to keep going right across? My wife phoned me this morning and said I have skunks underneath my garage. Yeah, so it's a big sacrifice you're making.
Yeah, Montreal's the best. Yeah. The Canadians, Montreal Canadians, they shouldn't separate because then we wouldn't have them. Yeah.
When I saw it, I felt good about it. I felt, in fact, as if I would like to do something myself to say, what is all this about?
Let's play a guessing game.
In the offices of a public relations firm in Toronto or Montreal. It'll be one in the heart of ordinary Canadians.
We in the grassroots now must get together, put our heads together, dialogue, and have conversation, and hopefully bring the thing to a successful conclusion.
Il y a trois choses qu'il faut savoir. Il faut être capable, il faut vouloir, et puis il faut le faire. Il faut s'aider. Il faut l'unité absolument. Il n'y a rien qui va battre ça.
Us old-timers, we're done. We're in the twilight side of her, every one of us. The average age, Second War veteran, is 71. I'm one of the younger ones at 69, you know, listed at the high school. But it's our sons, our grandchildren, that are going to take this nation, and, you know, this country into the next generation. And merciful Mother of God, I don't know. Somebody better turn them around.
Quebec is a part of Canada at this moment, and I'd like it to stay that way.
The least we can do is learn some French and be willing to accept French as part of Canada, part of our history. Why would we want to change that?
This is from the people outside Quebec. The people inside Quebec, they prefer that you say part of Canada. We value you as part of our Canadian heritage, as part of our identity.
Star Trek: The Next Generation, tonight at 7 on